Hey, Daniel and Ivan, this is Brad. Are y'all getting any visual or audio?
No, there's no visual or audio. I can see his icon blinking, but I don't know what that is exactly. So
Yeah, I think that's that. It looks like he started the recording, but there's not anything being presented or discussed yet.
yeah, I think we're seeing the same thing. It just isn't coming through yet.
Hello, testing, testing. Testing. Somebody talk to me. I've lost all my participants. I think I didn't. I think I was not recording.
It's the poor guy on pause. Or is it?
No. I got 6 chats. Says hi everyone. People are okay. Okay, we got it fixed anyway. Okay, let me back up just a little bit. I talked about some things here at the beginning. Okay. Okay, somebody's back. You're hearing me now?
Okay.
Ivan Morris, talk to me.
Yes, I'm hearing you now.
Okay, good. We got it turned on. I was when I realized I wasn't getting any feedback. Some of you guys got a. Yeah, I saw you sent me the host. I got to put out my cell phone number so that you can call me. I think I'll probably do that. I don't want anybody calling me in the middle of the night. Okay, let me back up a little bit. I started off, I talked about the number 8, where we calculated the invalid payment dates, and I took the first thing I did, I just took this one straight from here, and I wrote it as the valid ones. So I put this balance due greater than 0. I just put this in there just like that. And then I put the other one in there. And then I turned around and put a not in front of it to get my answer. I should get two rows returned. So that's number 8 in module 5. I'm going to move on kind of quickly. I went and talked about this one, and I talked about I want to find this records in Fresno that are either in the 559 area code or null. And I talked about what would happen if I said vendor city is equal to Fresno and vendor phone starts with a 559 or vendor phone is null. And we pointed out that if I write it like this, the or dominates, so the and gets put together first, and it finds everybody where the city is Fresno and the phone has the 559, or the vendor phone is null. And we find that the and happens first, so it's always going to put together the ands first. If you want to get the correct results, you have to put it in parentheses. Okay? That will always be the case in computer science. It's always going to be the case in Java and C, all of them. Okay, questions on that? Then I talked a little bit about this like idea. I think the preferred way to do that one, to do the one in chapter 5 that wanted to find where the vendor contact last name begins with A, B, C, or E, is to do it like this and say like A through C, comma E. Okay, followed by anything. I think that's the preferred way. If you did it like this, I said, okay, that works. Does it begin with an A? Does it begin with a B followed by anything, C or E? That works, but or's between them. This way I like a lot too. where the left one is N, A, B, C, or E. Lots of people will do it that way. And I talked a little bit about how if you're going to talk about the first letter of the last name, you need to split that out and put it into a field by itself if that's going to happen very often, because using like and splitting apart a field is a violation of the first normal form. Then I talked about brackets. I'm saying, who needs the brackets? We don't need brackets. Just go ahead and lose them. I'm not going to count it wrong. But you can create a table in SQL Server. You can create a table and put spaces in the table name. This is a no-no. This will always be a no-no. Guaranteed to get you in trouble. And just don't do it. If you have to, I suppose you can put spaces in an alias. I say it's a bad idea because most of the time in SQL, we do not format our output for the end user. In SQL, all we're doing is pumping the data up to another level. And there's something up above the SQL server that is receiving these data, processing these data, turning them into a report, turning them into a web page, doing something. Question? Let's see, is that a question or just somebody's? Let's see.
It was me, probably. I didn't realize my mic was on.
Okay, well. Anyway, let's see. A lot of people I'm seeing are forgetting to select their database. I'm going to start getting nastier about this, so do select your database. Okay. And what else? Okay, that's all I've got for this. I will put this out. I will attach this to the to an announcement. Let's and I pointed out that I am going to turn on test 1 today. I'm going to turn on test 1 right after class. It'll be available. Once you access the test, it will be timed. And I'll have I've got it marked. It says, you know, when you follow this link, you're going to access the test. So if you just go look and read the directions, you're not accessing the test. But if you, then it says, you know, when you follow this link, you will begin the test. It says it in red and all that jazz. So pay attention to that. I will time the test, and I tend to be not real strict on the time to a point. Okay, I think I've got it at 3 hours. That means if you need to take 3 hours and 10 minutes, do what you need to do. You'll do a whole lot better by going ahead and finishing that last problem and just not worrying about the 10 minutes. I probably won't. On the other hand, at the time that the test times out, at the time that it clicks off, I am very strict about having it turned in by then. Oh, I was just turning it in and it clicked off and now it won't let me turn it in. Yes, that's because you missed the time deadline to turn it in. Do not miss that time deadline to turn it in. It will be, I believe, Tuesday at 5 p.m., end of business, okay? So that gives you Rest of Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday through the day. Okay. That is a hard deadline. And I do deduct if you miss that one. Question, Juana.
So when I get in the test, is the only way that I can print the question?
Huh?
Or can I print my question and see it until I get to programming?
Well, you can't get the questions without starting the test.
I print them because I like to see pictures.
If you print it, you print it. It's just a Word document.
Okay.
And I have 4 or 5 of them that I tend to cycle through, so I have different versions. Okay. Others? Anybody online? Questions? Mr. Morris, you still hearing me okay?
Yes, I am.
Okay, cool. I guess I lost 3 or 4 people there. Oh well. Now we're going to begin. So on test 1, I'm going to open this.
5 p.m.
I'm going to go to test 1. Okay, test 1. I'm going to go ahead and publish at this time. Now, notice test 1, do not access the test until you're ready to complete it within, I think I'll probably change that to 2.5 hours. Document will be time-stamped. You are responsible for observing the time limit. Running overtime. Running overtime will carry something. Depends on how much overtime we're talking about. Pay attention to the due date time. This one does lock. Let's see, I'll edit this. Change it to 3 hours.
And this is closed book, correct?
What?
The test.
What about it?
We can't use our notes to complete this, correct? Or
Yes, you may use your materials.
okay.
Okay, when you follow the link, next line you will begin test 1. There it is. So when you follow the link, it is timed. That's about the same as the practice test. Let me save it. And so that is published. And let me edit it. Well, I don't think you can get to it now because it's
Wrong date.
it timed out last year sometime. Let's see, until March. That's today, March 1st, Tuesday at, what did I say? 5 o'clock. Go ahead.
It's already here.
Well, it's already, you can see it, but you can't open it because the the timer has expired on it. Done. So March 5th, 2009, it is due. At the same time, save. Okay, now you should be able to open it. if you are in this class. And I will go over and now make it available to the other class. I wish they would set this up for me where everybody responded as one class. Publish, edit, change the time to 3 hours. Make it March 5th. At 5 o'clock. It is due March 5th at 5 o'clock. So due March 5th. Time's out at March 5th. It's available now. Yeah, time starts when you download the test. And I will reiterate that if you're running, you know, I don't want you to just take the test, access the test, and then turn it in 2 days later. That's what if you print the test, take the test then. I am less strict on the exact number of minutes that you spend between the time you get it and the time, but I am strict on getting it turned in before the due date, before it times out, because this is going to stop on March 5th at 5 o'clock. And that means I got to turn it back on first, and there will always be a couple of people that will, oh, Dr. Smith, I was just finishing up and it timed off. Well, yes, it will do that. Save. All right. So that is turned on. Data aggregation. Module 7. Module 7 will not be on test 1. Module 7, even though the first piece of it is, we have some unfinished business in chapter 4. We have not covered these set operations yet, and that is the union, intersect, and accept. So union, set intersection are those things which are in both tables. Union, both tables. Set union, they're in both sets. So database and set theory are about the same. Excuse me, I misspoke. Union, they are in either set. Either set. Set union, either set. Set intersection, if you think about the intersection of two streets, if you think about what Spring Creek and Avenue K, what points are on both of those streets, the intersection of that, right where they come together. If you're standing there, you are on Avenue K and you are on Spring Creek. I suggest you not stand there very long. So the intersection, so union, intersect. The other one is accept. We don't use it as much. Accept is set difference. Those which are in the first set and not in the second set. It is an important set operator to give us full set of operations, but most of the time what you will use will be a union. Most of the time you're putting things together in a union, but intersect is the same. Intersect is used similarly. In a union, I'm going to get those things that are in both sets. Yeah, okay, those things that are in both sets. I'm not saying that quite right. I'm going to get those things that are in either set. So if one set is A, B, C, and the other set is A, B, X, I'm going to get A, B, C, X. Go ahead.
So union is like an inner join.
Union, no, it's not like an inner join. It's different.
Just you have everything common.
I agree with you, but union is like union. It is different from an inner join. So when you do union, I want one row for everything that is in either set. Okay? So if one set contains A, B, C, and the other set contains X, Y, Z, I want A, B, C, X, Y, Z. Now, if something is in both sets, most of the time, you only want to see one row for it. Most of the time. You can ask for it to show you duplicate rows. Most of the time, database does not show duplicate rows. Now, here are the rules. A union operator combines two or more select statements into a single result set where the values selected are in either side of the union or both. A, union B, includes all of the rows that are in either A or B. Okay? By default, the union suppresses duplicate rows. That's usually what you want. Very seldom do you want to have duplicate rows. You can get duplicate rows by, instead of just saying A union B, you say A union all B. So if you put the all operator, you get duplicate rows, but you typically don't do that. Some points, some rules. Field lists in both select statements must contain the same number of values. I cannot take a union of two sets that are not the same. So if one set has 3 fields and one set has 2 fields, forget about it. I can't do it. Now there's some ways that you can kind of pretend, but the select operator that you're unioning, so I select from one table, union, select from another, or the same table, put them together. They have to have the same number of fields. The values must be compatible. For example, if you selected a date in one of them and a number in another, it might be compatible, but I'm going to say no, you can't do it. It might accidentally just do it, because remember, a number is also a date is also a number on some level. Everything's a number on some level. Let's say, how about a real number and a character field? They're not even close to being the same thing. Okay, so you couldn't do a union with them. They have to be the same kind of thing. Now, if you have a character field, one of them is 6 characters and the other one is 8 characters. It will probably put those together for you and give you a result field of 8 characters and just pad them out with spaces. The field names do not have to match in the select. The names, it doesn't care. Now, I usually make mine match, but it doesn't care. You can alias them, and it will take the names from the first table. Table A, union table B, or intersect. The names of the fields will come from the first table. It's just, that's the way it works it. What else? Database products will vary. I haven't seen them vary that much. but they may. If there is an order by, it applies to the entire union. So if you have an order by, at the end of it, it comes after the union. So it puts them together, gets you this big set of rows, and then it orders them. Yes? Mm-hmm.
In real life, when do you use it?
A union?
Yeah.
Well, I've got an example in here. SQL Server gives us a full outer join. Let me scroll down to it. We want to, here's an example of when we would use it. I want to get everything from invoices and invoice archive. And my belief is, as I'm reading this table, I think invoice archive is inactive invoices. There are invoices that are so old, they've gone, they're 10 years old or better, and we don't want to keep them. But I want to see all of them. So I'm going to say select everything from invoices. And since these will have the same number of rows, I can get away with saying select asterisk because I know they have the same number of rows. So select from invoices, union, invoice archives, order by. I'm going to get everything. I think I only have a couple of rows in invoice archive. Okay, here's one. SQL Server gives us a full outer join. Now, I have never in my life used a full outer join. A full outer join is, I want everything from both tables. And where it doesn't match, I'm going to put nulls in there. So it's like a right outer join and a left outer join put together. Well, most database products don't give you a full outer join. The reason they don't, well, they're so seldom used. They're very seldom. Most products don't include them. If I needed one, I say here, and I'm not sure why I ever would, I could create one using a left outer join and a union. Okay, here it is. Select everything from table A, left outer join B on A, primary key, B, foreign key, I should have said there probably, but if it were named PK there, it would be named PK down in the front. I usually keep my field names the same. Union, notice that this one has it reversed, B, left outer join A. I could have said A, right outer join B. In that case, would have been the same thing. So if I said right outer join, I would have gotten the same thing. And I point down here, notice that I switched the order. In fact, some database products don't even implement a right outer join. Everything's a left. You just switch the order. The outer join, by the way, was why we went to the new syntax. I didn't talk much about that. Intersect operators, intersection of two sets. Everything we said about union applies to the others. You have to get them all the same. The except operator is useful when I need an exclusive OR. Exclusive OR is sometimes written XOR, XOR, and sometimes they give you that as an operator. I don't believe we have that in built into our system. If you look at XOR carefully, the thing about XOR, I want A or B, but not both. So let me pull this, let's see. Go to Notepad. A XOR B. Now, if A is true, so true XOR true is false. Okay. Now, A or B would be true. A and B would be true, but exclusive or true XOR true is false because they can't both be true. True XOR false is true. False true and false now. Be consistent here. Now let's take a look at these guys. Okay, take a look at XOR. Notice that if I were to put the truth table for either and or up there, I wouldn't have this property. But if I take these two, true, if I take these two guys, and let me point here, like this, notice that I get the third one back. If I take just this one and this one together, I get this one. So XOR is the only one that is undoable. It is used heavily in cryptography. If you think about it, I can encrypt something. So if for example, if this is my code that I'm trying to make a secret, and let's see, this is the encrypted code. So this is what I'm trying to hide, and this is the code I'm encrypting. This would be the key. So if you took this with the encrypted code, put them together with an XOR, you would get back the plain text code, bit by bit. And that's how it's done. It's actually a very powerful encryption tool. So anyway, XOR is used a lot. XOR lets us do this, select from A, except select something from B. So this essentially gives us the XOR union, select B, where it's not in A. And if you look at that, that gives us the XOR. All set operators have the same level of precedence applied left to right. Okay, I don't spend a whole lot of time on those guys. I will talk about them more. We will see them. We will use them a lot more in the next class. Next. Okay, let's take a short break. Just quick bathroom break. Everybody in here is going to sleep.
Hey, Dr. Smith, can you hear me?
Go ahead, yes.
So I haven't been able to see your screen yet, but I've been following along in the modules. Are you able to share your screen today? I know you're recording, so I can catch up on it later.
Okay. Well, I'm just having a great day today.
Yeah. Well, my speaker's not working, so I've dialed in and out a couple times. There it is.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
I'll get this new setup down soon, I hope. Okay, we're going to take a short bathroom break. I'm going to pause the recording just because I don't want to record the Right now. Now I have. Okay, so I'm now recording and got the screen share on. And because we're starting the new material now, Module 7, starts off with the union set, and I don't, it doesn't quite fit anywhere. It's just kind of one of those non sequitur things. But this is really what it's about. Module 7 is about what we call the aggregate functions. Aggregate functions, when you think about them, they are, well, there are 5 of them that are always discussed. Sum, add them, add something up, aggregate them, add it up, sum. Average, take the average of a number, okay? So the sum, the average, count, 1 little, 2 little, 3 little records. If I say count a field, I want to count the field that is not, count the fields that are not null in them. Well, here they are. Count, sum, average, there we are. And then I have min and max, minimum and maximum. The sum and the average apply only to numbers. It doesn't make any sense to try to add up people's names. Not going to get anything out of it. If they are fields that are, if they're character fields that represent like a social security number, it doesn't make any sense to add up your social security numbers. What's that going to tell you? So you wouldn't do it. So, but if you have something, if you have a number like the amount of an invoice or something, I can add up all the invoices and I can ask how much value do I have in all of my invoices. Okay. Similarly, minimum and maximum can be applied to fields. Okay. The question gets a little tricky when you have nulls in there. Where would a null be the minimum or would a null be the maximum? What do you think? Neither. Null does not apply to greater than, less than, or equal to. Therefore, if I say minimum, maximum, I will not get the null value back. What would happen if they were all null? And I asked for the minimum salary, and in the set, all of them were null. I would probably get a logical error, I'm guessing. Okay. That would be tricky because I'm not sure what I get back. It would probably error out because there's nothing it can give you. Can't give you nothing because the minimum isn't nothing. It doesn't make any sense. Count will count those things that are not null. So if I say to count the last names, count the middle initials. Give me how many middle initials do I have in this set of records? We'll count the ones that are not null. If you have no middle initial, it won't count it. Okay, these guys right here are covered in every textbook. There are others. They take Professor King's video here is fairly good. I like Dr. King. So if I say select count invoice ID from invoices, this is going to tell me how many records I have in the invoices table. Why? Because invoice ID is a primary key. They all have to have one. And similarly to any other derived field, we do have to give these an alias. I have to give it a name. Otherwise, it's going to be no column name. We'll copy this. How many records do we have? Okay. Oh, yeah. 114. 114 was the count. Now, if your objective is to count records, my objective is to count the records. If I count the primary keys, it will be the same as the number of records, correct? It's a primary key. They all have to have one. It has to be unique. Therefore, the number of primary keys will be the number of records. And it's a little bit like if I told you to count noses in the room. Which, can you count the noses? And so as you're going through the room, you say, let's see, there's 1 and there's 2. And then you come to this person over here and you say, gee, I'm sorry, I can't see your nose. Could you turn around this way and look at me, please? Okay, so I have to look at your nose. I have to, find your nose and count it. But I'm not really interested in your nose. I'm interested, everybody has one. Yes, supposed to. And so I just say, if you see a body there, count it. And you can speed up your database this way. Very, very seldom does it matter a whole lot what you do with your data. Well, it does. But here is one place that you can speed up your database. You say count asterisk. Count any darn thing you see. You don't have to go in and look for the record. I don't care if you count their ears and divide by 2. Go ahead. What?
Record.
Yeah, you're just counting the record. So when you say count asterisk, that says count anything that's there. Right. If there's a record there, count it. So it doesn't try to find any particular one. This one, if you're going to say count it, it has to check invoice ID and make sure it's not null. Has to go find it and check that it's not null. Well, invoice ID can't be null. I'm not interested in it. It can't be because it's primary key. So I'm just going to say count asterisk, and this should give me exactly the same count of 114. Okay, but this one ran a little faster. Paloma?
Yeah, but it is counting just the row?
It's counting just the row, yes.
Okay.
It's counting anything that's there. Just, we'll count as one. Yeah, the row. No, not the individual columns. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's actually the rows in the output. So it says go in there and just get all the rows from that table and then count the rows. And that is faster. Count all will return a different value if there are duplicates. Count all, count distinct. Discarded duplicate values as the primary key. Here goes the head count. If you were told to take a head count, okay, then would you really count heads? No, you don't have to count heads. Just count anything any part of them you see. Therefore, it says that it's better to do count asterisk. If the range is empty, or if all of the fields are null, count will return 0. So if there aren't any, it returns 0. Average and sum, it doesn't quite work the same way, works on individual numeric fields, and both require at least one valid number. One valid field. I can't take an average of nothing. I can't take an average of nothing. I can't add up nothing and come up with an answer. The sum of nothing isn't 0. It isn't. And even if it were, the sum of nothing, if it were 0, I would have 0 elements in there, so I would have 0 divided by 0. Well, what's 0 divided by 0? Who knows? Who has taken calculus? Right? We don't know what 0 divided by 0 is. I could argue that it was 26 because 0 times 26 is 0.
It's undefined.
Yeah, it's what we call indeterminate. We don't know. There's no way of telling, is it 1, is it 0, is it 23? So anyway, the idea is average and sum need at least one value in there. If I have one number in there, then I can tell you the sum and I can tell you the average. Otherwise, I can't tell you. And what happens is if you give me something where I don't have a number, I'm going to give you back null. Min and max work on any data type that can be compared. They work fine with dates. They work fine with characters. If there exist null values in the field, let's see, number, date, string will have well-defined unless there exist null values. If you have any null values and you're asking about minimum, minima, or maxima, I want to know the minimum or the maximum, and there are null values in that output. Okay, so I say, well, what is the minimum salary for people in this room? And somebody has a null salary. I will get a warning. It will give me the lowest number it has, but it will warn me that there are null values, and there's no way of comparing those. Okay. Students don't usually have problems with these. I've never had anyone have issues. Here's where the fun begins. Select vendor city, count vendor city, count something. So I want to know vendor city, count. And let's see what happens when I execute that. I'm going to come back over here. And I'm going to say, I want vendor city and the count. And when I try to execute this, I get, for my reading pleasure, a red error message. Now let's look at that error message because you probably will see it. What does it say? The column vendors, vendor city, is invalid in the select list because it is not contained in either. You scroll over to get that on the screen. In either an aggregate function or in the group by clause. Here comes a new clause, folks. The group by clause. Okay. What do I want to count? Vendor city is going to give me, well, I got a whole bunch of Fresno, a couple of San Diegos, a couple of Washington, D.C.s. What do I want to count? Do I want the count of all cities on every row? No, 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 no. I don't want the count of all cities. I want to break it out and count by city. Well, how do you know I want to count by city? Maybe I want to count by area code. Maybe I want to count by state. You just don't know unless I tell you. And so the point is that I have to tell you how I want it to be broken out. Okay, here's a new rule. New rule. If you have an aggregate function, one or more aggregate functions, one's fine. If you have two, it's the same. If you have an aggregate function and In the same select statement, you have a non-aggregate function. You with me? Then you must have all of the non-aggregate functions must be contained in a group by. Group by vendor city. Notice it's saying vendor city is invalid. Well, because it's not an aggregate function, or it's not in a group by clause. Well, I just put it in a group by clause. So now it should be happy, and it will be. Now what's going to happen here? When I execute this, notice that I did not give it a name. I have to give it a name. It's okay with me if you give it as X. You have to give it a name. If you don't give it a name, I'm going to make flatulating noises at you. You have to give it a name because I do not like this no column name. I don't care if it's named X or Y. That's fine. If it's got a name, I can use that name in something later. Notice that I have 2. It would be nice if you said, you know, number of cities or something like that. And if you wanted to use brackets and put spaces in it and you want to play around with that, go ahead. I have 2 from Anaheim, 1 from Ann Arbor, 1 from Auburn Hills. I notice that they are coming out in order by vendor city, and that just happened. It just happened that way. There's nothing particular. There is no order to it. I don't know why it did it. It just did it that way. It doesn't matter. You got a whole bunch of Fresno. What else do I have? A bunch of Los Angeles. Guess where our publisher lives? How'd you know? Remember the order of the operations are that, let's see. I think, let's see, order by comes last. Now, since I've got order by, I can order by X because order by comes after the select line. So if I put the order by X on there, I can, and that is why I like having it named. So that I can order by. And let's order by X. Let's order by X descending. And so we can see what the, Fresno's the big one, followed by Sacramento, followed by Washington, I guess DC, Los Angeles, Pasadena, San Francisco, Phoenix and Boston, and so on down. Okay, new rule. What's the new rule? If you have didn't work, did it? New rule right here. No exceptions in any SQL platform. If you have an aggregate function, but any of those 5, min, max, sum, average, or count, and there are others. I think there are about 20-something of them. There is a standard deviation for those of you who's taken some statistics, variance, and others. There's a lot of statistical functions. This is the statistics class. So we're going to stick with those 5. Those 5 are the ones that are covered in every textbook, and the big 5: min, max, average, sum, and count. You can have multiple fields. Notice here I have vendor city, vendor state.
A group data pricing must appear in the group line by function line as well.
I didn't catch all of that, but
Vendor city and vendor state must appear in the group by line as
Yeah.
well.
new rule says it doesn't matter how many aggregates you have. It doesn't matter how many non-aggregates you have. All of your non-aggregate non-aggregate fields, non-aggregated fields must be in a group by. This will never change. Notice that this gives a lot of people a lot of trouble in Access. Those of you who took the Access class, or do you remember once you said, group, once you said do count, you had to, you got the group by line in your query. And what people tended to do, well, they just group by everything. Group by all the fields. Well, if you group by all the fields, I mean, it doesn't make any sense to group by the primary key. Why not? Well, what does a group by do? A group by takes all duplicate, in this case, vendor city. All the duplicates of vendor city get collapsed into one row. So all 41 or whatever it was rows of Fresno got collapsed into one row and the count was there. Okay. Well, what if I grouped by the primary key? Yeah, I'm going to get all of them are going to have count of 1. Okay. That's kind of a giant leap sideways. What if I have 2? What if I have vendor city and vendor state? Well, if I group by vendor city, comma, vendor state, then what will I have? Fresno, California. How many rows will I have? Fresno, California. I'm probably still going to have 40 rows for Fresno, California. Is there any other Fresno? Besides in California? I believe, isn't there a Fresno, in Spanish, what is Fresno? What? What is it in?
Cool.
Pool?
Fresh.
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 Oh,
Fresco.
okay, fresco. Fresco. Or could it be like strawberry?
No.
I know that they do grow strawberries. Strawberries are frescas. Fresa. But they're not the same thing. Okay. Okay. Anyway, there is a town in Texas, Fresno, but I think its name is Los Fresnos. Down in the Rio Grande Valley. But there could be another one. So what happens is all of the places where the city and the state are the same in one group. If either of them are different, that's a different group. For example, there is definitely a San Diego, California, and a San Diego, Texas. There would be a different group. So if you did a count, then you would get a different count. That would break it out. You would have one for San Diego, California, and one for San Diego, Texas. So San Antonio. And San Antonio, Texas, San Antonio, New Mexico.
Dallas, Georgia.
Dallas is in Georgia too. Okay. Well, that's so if I said group by first name, last name, where the first names are the same and the last names are the same, would all be grouped. If I have an aggregate function, and this is the hardest thing for the students to understand. If I have an aggregate function, here is an aggregate function. Anything that is not an aggregate function must be in the group by. No exceptions. No exceptions. Don't like exceptions. Biggest mistake. Have an aggregate and a non-aggregate, and then they're going, Dr. Smith, why is my query bombing? And I say, well, what's the new rule? Okay. It's going to be that way in every. You can have a field in the group by clause that does not appear in the select. So you can group by state even though it's not in the select. So you could say, count and then group by city, comma, state would be perfectly acceptable. You wouldn't be able to tell the difference. You wouldn't be able to tell which one was which because unless it were output. But you could get 2 San Diegos with different counts. You'd say, well, I don't know which one's which. And then you'd put state in the output and it would show. But you don't have to have it there. See what we've got here. Having. All right, this is one that gives students a lot of trouble. Think about the where. I'm going to end on this one. Think about the where in a SQL statement. So select from where. Select vendor ID from vendors. Where vendor city equals San Antonio. How does that work? Each row is validated. Having is a little bit different. In the having, applies to groups. Having applies to the groups. I can't say select vendor ID average blah 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 from invoices where CNT is greater than 1. That isn't going to work. By the way, I cannot use CNT on the having line because that's considered to be part of the from statement. So I cannot use this alias CNT, right? If I just said CNT down here, having CNT greater than 1, it wouldn't work. So I want vendor ID, the average of the invoice total. Let's go back to the one we have here. Group by vendor city, okay? Having what do we want to see? Let's say greater than or equal to 5, just for fun. Okay, so this is remember this having is going to apply to the groups. Execute this.
So that works like where?
I'm trying to show that it's different from a where. A where, let's see, we got Fresno, Sacramento, Washington, DC, I assume. Okay, let's put a where in here. Where vendor state equals California. Okay, now that's going to apply to every row. I could output vendor state, but we know that we know the Fresno, Sacramento, and Los Angeles are in California, right? So I don't have to fool with that. So if I execute this, I'm not going to see Washington because Washington does not match the where clause. I'm going to see anything that has a count greater than or equal to 5, let's say greater than or equal to 3. So this one applies to each row. So the where clause applies to each individual record. So it looks into the record and it says, is this a California record? If so, it becomes part of the processing. It gets counted. When it finishes counting everything, then it applies the having, and it only displays those those groups that conform to the having. So the where applies to individual records, the having applies to the whole group. Am I making any sense out there in internet land?
Yes, sir. Can you define, when you do the count, could you add a category? So if you wanted to do, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 20 for your X.
Right. Could you stratify by 15, 20% and stuff like that? Or let's say I wanted one group of threes and then another group of fives. And the answer is yes, you could. I would probably break that out into separate SQL statements. And then that might be a good place for a union. So let me see. I'm trying to think if I can get that one, if I can hit that question. I'm not sure I understand what you're trying to do. Are you trying to break it out? For example, we have a couple of fours here. What would you want me to do with those two of them there? Pasadena and San Francisco both have a count of 4. Did you want me to put them together or what?
Well, so in this case, if we had one more column that said category, and we said, less than 5 would capture the bottom 2, 5 to 10 would capture the middle 2, and then over 10 would capture the top one.
Right. You would need you would need another SQL statement, and you could feed. I can have an SQL statement that selects from an SQL statement. Now we don't know how to do that right exactly yet, but we will very shortly. So okay. I can daisy chain SQL statements together. In general, the output from an SQL statement, kind of like we talked about union, they all need to be the same stuff. It makes no sense to have an SQL statement in which I have a person's name and their shoe size, and then another person's name and their IQ. That stuff that it needs to be the same kind of thing. Okay. Okay. Having applies to the groups. And here we have just about the full syntax of the select from where statement. Go ahead, please, Juana.
I wasn't what I was asking you. As soon as I saw the group in another way.
Mm-hmm. Right. The where says what records are going into that group by. So I'm only considering records that come from California. And then within that, I apply the group by and the having. And now we have in all its glory the select from where statement. So the idea is the where, the group by is considered part of the from, if you like. I think of the having as part of the group by. So I will always put the having and the group by on the same line. You cannot have a having by itself. It makes no sense to have a having without a group by. I don't have to have a from, I don't have to have a where, I don't have to have an order by, I don't have to have the group by or the having. But I put them together because I think of them as the same thing. Sometimes you will see people will write it like that, and that's fine. Yeah, however you think it should be written. Now let me see what else is on this. So the having. Dr. King placed the halving on its own line. Group by country, halving, okay, that's fine. That's what Dr. King did. I think of halving as, I always put the halving and the group by on the same line. You can have the join in there. It's okay. So let's replace vendor ID. Let's see. Let's look at this one. Select vendor ID, the average of the invoice total, and the count. Okay. So this one, everything I need comes from the invoices. So I take the average, count, and so this is going to break it out by vendor ID. Remember, vendor ID, I'll have many, I'll have counts. I'm going to find out that some of them, I'm going to order this one. I think I'll order it by the count. I think it'd be more fun. Let's order it by count. And let's see the big ones first. Okay, execute this guy. Notice that vendor ID 123 has 44 invoices. Their average invoice cost is $98 and something. 122 has a lot of them, 9. Look at vendor 72. Has an average cost of $10,963, but they only have 2 invoices, and so on. Okay. Now, everything comes from the invoices table. Why? Because I'm only dealing with the vendor ID. What is vendor ID in the invoices table? It is a foreign key. Well, I can select it. I don't have to have, if I'm selecting the foreign key, if I'm getting the vendor ID, I've got a vendor ID in the invoices table. Just select it. Let's throw a hitch into the get along. I want to change vendor ID to vendor name. That vendor ID doesn't tell me anything. I want to know the vendor name. Now, what did I just pick up? What do I have here? Inner join. Okay, so here now in all its glory is a select. Now, these select statements can get really, really long. If you don't have some kind of a format to them and some kind of a method to your madness, as we go deeper and deeper into programming, particularly in a database, if you don't have some kind of a convention on how you name things, what you name things, how you format stuff, it's really gonna be a mess. We're not gonna see stuff get really long, but in the next class, we're gonna have programs that run 700 and 800 lines and span 3 or 4 different platforms. That'll be the fun part to it. Okay, let's take a look at this one. I'm going to change it back. I'm going to order by count again, just for consistency. I should have the same one. So everything's the same, except now I'm selecting the vendor name. The vendor name comes from the vendors table. Notice that I violated my convention. What was my convention that I said I usually do it this way. Obviously I don't always. What's my convention on left and right? I usually put the parent table on the left. Oh, well. What? I did, but it's an inner join, so it doesn't matter. Inner join, you don't care which one. Let's see what we get. Notice we got exactly the same thing. So average of $23,978 per invoice was Mallory lithographing and data reproductions. Federal Express has the most, but they don't get very many. Pacific Bell has tiny ones. Now the question is, what is the minimum and the maximum in here? And I don't know, that might be what Brad was asking. Can we ask about, can we get something that shows the minimum and the maximum? That would be 2 more queries. So I could certainly do that in a query. I could certainly do that. And what I would do is I pass them up, each query gets passed up to a web page. And the web page can catch lots of different queries and can display them all at the same time. So I'm not going to get into that right now because we're not doing that right now. Praise the Lord. We'll just say sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. Okay, let me look over here. Having. Okay, this is discussion. That pretty well wraps up Module 7. I'm going to go ahead and make the assignment, but I'm going to put it far enough in the future to where I want you to focus on test 1. I will come back to this next time. Let's see, when is Good Friday?
In 2 weeks, I think.
2 weeks? Okay.
Or date or the 14th?
It's in March, correct?
We are in March already.
Yeah, we're in March already.
Next Friday we have class, right? And then next one is spring break.
Yeah, I'm asking when is Good Friday?
It's not until April 19th.
April 19th, I'm being told on the internet there. Okay, on that date, we will not have class. I never know whether I should do a online class, online lecture, something from home. I will probably do something. It isn't going to be a full hour lecture or anything like that. But that's okay. We don't have to worry about that until April 19th. Let's see, in 2 weeks, we have spring break. Is that right?
Not next Friday.
Okay, so next Friday we're in class, and then we skip a week in there. All right, well, you know why we have spring break, don't you? So you can go out and spend money. Party. It used to be for spring planting. And everybody, but how many of you go home and help your parents plant the fields? Well, anyway, that's okay. I didn't grow up on a farm either. So, my wife did. She grew up on a farm in California. Okay, I'm going to end it there. And I regret that I didn't have that screen shared. What I'm going to do is get a couple of guys that, no, I think what I'll do is we'll bring a laptop and I'll bring a headset for that laptop, plug it in there so we can have a monitor and so we can see what's going on and hear it on the headset and check in class. And I'll just have somebody watch that it's on, and if it's not working, so that person will be connected via the TCP/IP, and they can alert me when I don't have the share turned on or something like that. So I think that's what we'll do. We can use my laptop, or we can use somebody else's who brings theirs.
Didn't cell phones work good?
A cell phone would probably work. I mean, it's your data, but if with a computer and a headset, you'd be able just to hold a headset to your ear and see if you were hearing it. I guess, I don't know.
Also, the laptop would tell you if you're recording it. I just noticed that on mine when I had pulled up.
I think the laptop would tell you if you're recording it, but it wouldn't tell me if I were recording it. So I have to check, or somebody has to ask me, are you recording? But I think we can worry about that. Mainly, I just need somebody to alert me if I'm not getting through with audio. I don't always see all the little, but I've got a lot of little controls there to get exactly right. And so I'll bring a USB headset. I think we can just plug it into one of these machines and connect via Zoom. Okay. Okay, well, we're going to end there. I'm going to end the recording. Questions from the people online?
Do these have
No, sir.
machines?
Hang on just a second. Ivan? Randall? Just because I don't hear from somebody doesn't mean that they're not hearing me. Lots of times people just don't have microphones on their machines. Okay, well, I'm going to end the ending the recording.
All right. Thanks, Dr. Smith.
Good day.